Okay, you're live.
Hello, welcome to the Tuesday, July 13th, 2021 meeting of the Edina Parks and Recreation Commission. We are meeting in person at Edina City Hall, but the following participants are joining us via WebEx. Commissioners Doskach, Willett, and Strother. City staff Janet Kenton, and the presenters. To participate in community comment, residents must attend our meeting in person. Residents also have the option of submitting a commission correspondence form online at edinamin.gov. Welcome to those watching this meeting in person and remotely. Now I will call the July 13th, 2021 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission to order at 7:04 p.m. Janet, if you could do the roll call, please.
Actually, Chair Edis, I'll do the rolls tonight from in here. All right, we'll begin Sorum, Mork, Novlasky, Willett.
Here.
Miller.
Willett's here.
Here. Nelson.
Here.
Strother.
Here.
Good. Here. Haas. Here. McCauley. Chair Edis.
Here.
Roll's been taken.
I wasn't called.
Apologies, Commissioner Doskach.
I am here.
We've got you on the record.
Thank you. Item number 3, I'll ask for the approval of the meeting agenda and a second, please.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Chair, I'll just run through a roll call vote just because we do have some remote. So Commissioner Willett.
Yep. Aye.
Commissioner Doskach.
Aye.
Commissioner Strother.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Good.
Aye.
Commissioner Haas.
Aye.
Commissioner Edis.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 4, ask for a motion for approval of the minutes of June 8th, 2021, and a second, please.
So moved. Second. Second.
Director, if you'll do the roll call.
And just for record, we have the motion by Miller, second by Haas. We'll take roll. Willett.
Aye.
Doskach.
Aye.
Strother.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Nelson. Good.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Chair Edis.
Aye. Not so bad for being away for 490 days, right? So far. At this time, we usually have community comment. Seeing nobody in the audience, we will go on to item number 6 then. Reports and recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Edis. We have 2 reports and recommendations for you this evening. The first is your monthly 2021 work plan discussion and updates. In addition, once you complete that, then the next item up that we'll cover at that point is the development discussion for your 2022 plan. But as always, we do cover the 2021 plan and any available updates and progress that has been made on your work plan. I can provide an update as the initiative number 1 is currently with staff. As we discussed last virtual meeting, now that we're in person, last virtual meeting, was that staff has been working on this, but had been prioritizing the Just Deeds project. The council did join Just Deeds, and we have begun the process of renouncing racial covenants on, I believe it was about 50 plus park properties within the city that do have covenants on them. That work has been completed. So those have been renounced officially on the city park side of things. There's a parallel initiative that residential homeowners can also participate in the program find out if they have a covenant and go through that process. So you can find that information at edinamn.gov. The next step in that, and we did route out an email, is if anyone is interested in joining our race and equity advancement team on helping plan an event, kind of a prolonged piece after the COVID pandemic, to plan the renaming process for Yancey Park. That was part of that, and then be included within that planning. So if anyone does have any interest in that, please let me know. Back to your first initiative here of identifying barriers, we have completed a draft plan. I'm going to run that past the Race and Equity Coordinator, and then I'll route that out this week to Commissioners Strother, Miller, and McCauley. So you will see a draft plan this week. So we've completed the covenant portion. We're back on with the identifying barriers plan, and we'll route that out. So that's the update for Initiative 1. You'll see something this week.
Thank you.
And again, if anyone is interested in joining the Race and Equity Advancement team on planning that, please let me know.
Initiative 2, Commissioner Nelson.
So number 2 is just a refresher. That's where we were trying to create a presentation to be shared out to. At first, it was to do it within 6 different groups within the community, telling them about the parks and everything full circle to from who we are and what we do and how your money is used through it. We talked about doing an online video call through the Edina Talks, which would be a 20 to 30 minute. Originally, we talked about last time we talked about doing different chapters. We've come back around and said we'll try to do it all in one actual swoop. So taking this trying to condense down these 4 larger topics into one smaller topic and keeping it at a high level. So we had to have a rough draft of what that would look like. We need to understand who we should work with from, I'm not sure Perry, who actually writes and scripts out, or if they want to use their fancy people who do the usual talk, or how they want to, I don't know how we actually need to create the talent, or which one of us is going to get behind makeup and go on and do all this. But that's where I think we're kind of at. We've got a rough draft of what we want to say, but I think we need some help from communication staff to say, like, here's how we do it. We do a teleprompter. I don't know how that works and how high tech we are here at the city on the Edina Talk. So I feel like we have a pretty good stab of what we want to say, not the specifics, but at a high level. So I think we're at a place that we can really have the smart communication people tell us how they want to make this for this particular audience friendly, since this is kind of their initiative or branding issue. I don't know how you want to call it, grouping. So that's kind of my update. Is there anything else anybody wants to add?
I'll just add, I did speak with the communication staff, and they're actually considering your request to do a series. However, a normal Edina Town Talk is a 1-session event on that, but because of your content, they're entertaining the idea of a series, and we'll figure that out. As you know, this evening you are kind of in a hybrid approach coming back to live. I have been warned that Town Talks will do the same. So they will be recorded and streamed, but they will also be available to a live audience. So that the teleprompter is a good idea. I hadn't thought of that, but that would not be an option if you're in front of a live studio audience, as they say. You still could, exactly. Yeah, you definitely can have notes, but I think that is the next step. If you'd like, we can get in the particulars. If you'd like me to narrow down whether it's a 1 and then a series, and then we can come in and start planning that layout of the logistics of an event, whether it's 1 or a series, we can do that.
I think it really comes down to what they want to give us, because I did condense it down quite a bit into, I think it could actually be covered even talking slower in a 30-minute conversation. The funding may be longer, but I think we really can. That being said, if they're up for giving us different chapters, we can definitely elongate and talk more, especially if there is a live audience and perhaps they do have questions that may take us over 30 minutes versus questions when they type it in. So I think we have it in a place that we can stretch it back out or condense it. So it's kind of, if you can let me know what they say and who I should work with to help make that scripted. Great.
I would definitely agree you have enough content for more, but we'll
For
see how
sure.
that fits with
But we want to
the
keep
idea of
we want to
entertaining
keep
a
it
series.
entertained too.
Mhm.
So
I did see your updated content, Corin, so I'll go through that and give you any changes from the park side as well.
Initiative 3, in Eileen's absence, I can give you just an of what the different commissioners are working on. She had sent us an email, and I think Brian can add to this also. There's items looked at foundation/donations, legacy funds, infrastructure grants, park dedication fees if possible, sponsorship and naming rights, youth sports grants, general and special levies, referendum. The staff is helping us look at what the Edina's laws might be, where they're applicable here in terms of funding. So if Brian has anything to add, please.
I don't think I have anything else to add. Did you mention the sales tax, but that's under.
Sales tax, yes. This is one initiative, and we'll talk about this for 2022, that certainly will probably have some carryover possibilities into next year. Some of these items take a lot of time, a lot of people involved, and the uncertainty, I think, is more important. Anything to add, Director?
I know it's a little bit diving into the details, but just to update the commission that the Minnesota State Legislature has adjourned and there was a tax bill and the loss proposal has been included. So there's going to be a lot of steps that would need to occur, but that will culminate with a referendum by Edina voters November of 2022 upon those kind of menu of options. There'll be 2 ballot questions, one for the Fred Richards Park and one for the Braemar master plan portion of it. There'll be a lot of steps that the city has to undertake until then. Obviously, we'll keep you abreast of those developments, but as far as one item on your menu that has been successful at the state legislature, which we were not last session.
With relationship to Corin's initiative, when we talk about the sales tax, is that possible to cover somewhat there or not because of the uncertainty?
Absolutely. There will be a point in time when the council has to review ballot language and authorizes the referendum officially, that there will be a role where the city can no longer advocate. It will only be in an education standpoint. So at this time, I think we're still in that discovery and layout phase, but there will become a time when it is just purely educational on the facts of the question. But that will be a ways off into the future. So there's plenty of time for education. I think that is obviously one of your goals within the initiative number 2 is greater education of the system and its functions.
I mean, there's just, a lot of wondering about 2 outstanding master plans. And so if there's some possibility for us to be able to talk about the sales tax in that context would be good. Initiative 4, Matt, if you want to bring us up to date on anything, please.
Sure. Initiative number 4 relates to study and report on options to categorize underutilized park amenities areas and identify park amenity needs. One of the outstanding items was having additional dialogue with the city staff. That dialogue happened, and I received additional direction from the director on how we might provide additional guidance or work on this initiative in a way that will be of value. And so I plan to update the materials that are already created for the group to review, and then set up a meeting. I'm working on setting up a meeting of our group to discuss this initiative further in the next week or 2. That's my update.
Thank you. Thanks. Initiative 5.
Sure, I can give you an update on that. So Initiative 5, study and report appropriate benchmarks to assess status and progress on parks operations and service areas. We had established what we're calling 9 foundational benchmarks that we will use, either National Recreation and Park Association benchmarks of comparable cities our sized, or our own city standards that we've set and have committed to deliver against. So of those 9 in July, I just finished a quick recap over the weekend that I've sent out to the team, for the work team, for review. We have input on 7 of the 9. 2 of them are kind of ongoing discussions. One is the capital spending and funding sources that's already part of a work item, and the other annual expenditures on planning and development, which Perry, maybe we can talk about within a department perspective, how we set something on that that tells us what are we shooting for over the next several years to really continue to plan and develop into the future. So we do have updates on 7 of the 9, and as soon as the team gets a chance to review that, we'll share that with the broader team, and we'll continue to measure those. I think it's fair to say that of those 7, we have probably attained or are above the benchmarks that we're shooting for. So we already have some pretty good results, and we may need to expand it beyond those 7 to find areas to stretch or increase our goals that we're shooting for in the near future. The other area of this initiative that we still have some discussion around is the concept of service areas around the different quadrants of the city. So we've kind of identified a starting point for what those look like today, but haven't yet had a chance to do a bit of a deeper dive into what we do about that next. So that's still to come.
Thank you.
Commissioner Good, I'll just add one of the metrics that you and I had discussed that's included that we need updates on. The city council at their last meeting did receive the comprehensive financial report for closing out the year end 2020.
Okay.
So that leads to probably one of the metrics that we've discussed is finalizing the cost recovery index for some of our enterprises for 2020.
Yep,
so I
'cause we
can get
just
you that
had-
information.
We just had 2019 information that last time, so it'd be good to update that and see where we
Correct.
stand.
So we'll have that information shortly for you.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting on that, if I have those notes here somewhere, I think that if we look at those 2 kind of total cost recovery and management cost recovery, of the 8 facilities that we track, I think it was 6 out of the 8 were hitting, from 2019, we're hitting total cost metrics, and 5 of the 8 were hitting management costs, and the spread was between 1% and 4% under, right? So there was nothing that was deeply, quote unquote, in the red. So it'll be interesting to see the 2020 update.
Especially after 2020.
Yeah, that's right. Tough year, interesting year.
Any other comments, Director, for us, or? Okay. We'll move to item B, 2022 work plan development discussion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll kick this off and just wanted to also recognize that Student Commissioner Sorum had joined us just prior to the launch of that meeting, so he's also online with us. Your 2022 annual work plan, we're meeting here in the month of July. You have one more month of discussion here tonight and again in August. As far as the work plan progress, August would be a good meeting to try to have your recommended initiatives finalized to bring those forward. So then we would submit those to the engagement coordinator, and then Chair Itis will be giving a presentation of your proposed initiatives at the October work session with the City Council. After last month was kind of the beginning generation of ideas for that plan. So included in your packet this evening again is the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space page from the comprehensive guide plan that's included in here this evening, as well as a draft of some of the brief ideas that you had generated last meeting. And it did include those on the bottom of that first page on the parking lot, and then you can decide how to wordsmith those, discuss their merits, and eventually move those into initiatives. So just to recap for those watching, you had talked about evaluating, continuing, or expanding the 2021 Initiative 2 That was the item we had just discussed, which was to create a presentation to share information about parks and recreation facilities, services, and systems. So I know that's come up with this group about what does the future hold with that? Is it continuation? Is it an expansion? Or evaluating how your presentation went this year. As you discussed about continuing, what are the next steps on initiative number 3? That initiative is to report and provide recommendations on alternative funding sources for park-related improvements, including parks, facilities, and enterprise upgrades. As you discussed, there is more work to be done on that going forward. You had discussed last meeting about wayfinding and connected enterprises, how that integrates possibly with the trail system within our park system, and how all those things kind of tie together. You had talked about understanding deeper the role of the Clover Ride bus service, its work within the Southdale district, who rides that piece, and how, or is it worthwhile to connect some of the parks in that area? Particularly, you mentioned Roslyn Park. You had talked about ensuring master plan relevance, especially with the 2 that you have that are headed towards the loss proposal for Fred Richards Park and the Braemar master plan, in particular, the mountain biking that is extremely popular. There are many facets of those master plans that we do get calls on: mountain biking, natural resources restoration, pickleball. So there are a number of facets for those master plans that people are very interested. So making sure that those continue to be relevant so they can be implemented. You had talked about items from the strategic plan. I did a cursory review. I don't have anything that jumps out at me, but staff can go back and look at that again to see is there anything in particular there that we want to include, especially when it comes to studying the system. You had talked about accessibility expansion around playgrounds, whether that's existing or future ones. There were a few items on the staff wish list of things that you had mentioned could the commission assist with. One of the items that we do face, this is a very generous community of people that want to give back, is obviously we have a tree and bench memorial program. However, we do get calls from time to time of people that want to do a greater philanthropic donation to the community. We're recently working with one individual for Centennial Lakes Park that is, upwards of $10,000 to $20,000. What would be great for staff is if we did have a catalog or prospectus for items that would come before us, that if people were interested in donating to the system, of what some of those magnitudes could be. Also, we've had individuals that have come to us to say they wanted to give back to the park system, but they aren't in a financial position to afford a bench either. So I think on both sides of things, it would be interesting to get a discussion going around the philanthropic endeavors of the community around the park system, from a much grander scale, and also on maybe a smaller scale of how those things could happen. So talking about that, we've discussed there's a fiscal agent within the community that helps accept those donations, but it's that advocacy and kind of identifying that wish list, I guess you could say, for our system. That would be great. As a reminder, I'll remind you again in the schedule items, there is a all commission meeting that we did sent out a while ago on the tree ordinance. A survey was set up. I know we have one member that is attending for sure. If others are interested in kind of hearing a little bit of background on the tree ordinance, I think Commissioner Good, I think when you were chair, that came up as part of the work plan. There were a number of commissions that were interested in the tree ordinance and how that impacted their work, whether it be Planning Commission, Energy Environment Commission, et cetera. So we are going to be giving kind of a presentation and update on the tree ordinance itself, kind of as a prelude to all the commissions discussing and finalizing their work plans to see if that is something that could be on one of the commission's work plans, whether they're lead. Again, I think we've all been concerned about cross-commission work and the success and logistics of that. But just a reminder that that is out there. I know it hasn't truly come up at this body before, but just wanted to ensure that you were aware that was occurring. So that was kind of a recap of the items that you had brought forward last meeting. Again, wanted to kind of continue that discussion tonight, we can get into wordsmithing and bring things back. And it would be great to have a recommendation in August of where you'd like the work plan to head.
Barry, where do you find out more about the tree ordinance?
It's interesting because it's not just a tree ordinance. It's built within the building code for Edina. So it's primarily a tool used for residential and commercial development about, number of trees, how trees are counted on your property, when you can cut them down, et cetera, how that works. I believe the tree ordinance was established, Tom, in around 2016 or 2017, right around that time frame. So it's fairly new in its implementation. So I think a number of commissions are looking at that, not only from a building side of things, but just from a environmental, forestry, natural resources perspective as well. So it's interesting. There are a lot of nuances that Edina is similar to some communities and unique in others. So, one good example is, to our east in Minneapolis, there are boulevard trees that the city maintains, plants, prunes. In Edina and in a community just west of there in Minnetonka, the parcels are platted to the center line. So there are no boulevard trees. Those remain the ownership and responsibility of the homeowner underlying. So each tree ordinance for each community is a little bit unique. So there are a lot of nuances. If you're in a commercial development and you want to redevelop, there are certain requirements for trees there. If you're on your residential side, there are certain requirements there. Obviously, Luther Overholt, the city forester, is within the Parks and Recreation Department, so he has a huge role within that. He reviews all building plans, residential and commercial, for compliance on application and in the field for compliance as well. So obviously, he does a lot of also reforestation, planting, pruning of our own park system, managing disease tree efforts as well. So it's quite a bit of an ordinance. And it's, I would say when we look at plain language initiatives for our community, that's one that's probably not, looking through the city code or ordinances. Oftentimes it does take a second or a third read to make sure you understand exactly how you would be applying the ordinance to your property.
So within the park system, Luther would be in charge.
He's got a big umbrella. Yeah, he does. So obviously he reports to Tom, but everything from Emerald Ash Borer on park property to private property, he's involved. Whether it's a park development, he would be involved, also reviewing on private property, residential or commercial. He also handles a lot of the donations where people donate trees to the system. He works with volunteer groups on replantings and invasive species management. So some of those things are qualified in city code, and some of those are just practices and policies that we adopt.
As an aside, we have a cottonwood not on our property, but on the association at Dewey Hill East, and it's the second largest in the state, and it's coming down this fall. The DNR has watched it for 2 or 3 years, and it's pretty sick, but we just hope that they take it down that way instead of this way, us being this way. It's a big and very messy cottonwood, but well, they are just a terrible mess. Just as another question, in playing today, some person I was with mentioned to the number of trees that were removed from the golf course. And I didn't have a specific answer, but I said an approximately number similar to that was replaced. So I hope that I was close to being right. So anyway.
I believe you are correct.
Any other questions or comments towards Perry with the items that's on the parking lot?
I just kind of I guess, in addition to this parking lot set of ideas, or maybe as part of some of them, I was just thinking in very vague terms, because I don't have a lot of information to back it up, but I just kind of get the impression, I guess, personally, that the residents of Edina think that we have a great park system, and I think they're right. And I think that they, for the most part, let everything that needs to be done up to the park system and the park group. And there's just a little bit of distance, I guess, between the residents and the parks. They're there, they're great, someone takes care of them. I wish they'd do a better job, kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if there's some way we can, without spending a lot of money, and in fact, maybe to Perry's comments about philanthropy, and philanthropy that doesn't involve cash, can we somehow create a program to connect residents more to their local parks? And I know we have volunteer program that I've heard about, and I know we have ownership, and we've all said that we want to own one of the parks, but I don't see that. I don't see any results of that. And Tom, you might be able to tell me that there's a lot of stuff that happens and I'm just not seeing it. Of what I mean is of residents coming to help do something or take something on or clean up litter or repaint or landscape or something, so that the residents themselves kind of take on ownership, like real ownership of their local parks. And I know we've got the parks split up into enterprises and minis and neighborhoods. And so again, this is vague, but it's just, I just wonder if we can make an effort to really try to draw the neighborhood into the parks and help do something. If we have this wish list of things that, the residents can maybe raise money in the neighborhood to repaint the buildings or something, that we're getting together maybe once or twice a year and make it fun too, so that you're meeting your community, you're meeting more people than just your night out in your local, 6 houses up, 6 houses down kind of thing. You're meeting more people. So it's just this vague idea I had, but kind of thinking about what can we do that isn't going to be another, $5 million project, that we have the people that can do it, and we have a lot of things that probably need to be done. But I also don't know, on the liability side or on that, if there'd be issues, but that's just kind of this vague idea I had that would work into our strategic plan also, of just connecting people to the parks, but doing it in a way that benefits everybody.
I think one opportunity, certainly with Corin's group, I think being able to get us in front of the community, this will be our first step, and hopefully be able to do it annually perhaps, or pick, stronger areas. Maybe a year from now, we do the philanthropic end of it and say, here's the CIP, here's some things that, community. Oh, sorry. I got a soft voice anyway. But, something there, and there's an opportunity there, so.
I think the other part is maybe there is the adopter park that's part of the neighborhood, and I know that Janet manages that, and I think that I'm part of the ownership of Todd Park. But I do think there's an opportunity. Maybe it's partnering with Luther and saying, like, because every time I walk by Todd and I go over there and start weeding underneath the park signs, and then I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to do this because or I want to plant something. I'm like, I don't want them to mow over it once they plant it. So I do think there is an opportunity to expand on even the adaptive park because, I mean, I can weed anywhere, but it's like, I would plant something there, but if someone mowed over it, then I'd be really not very happy. So I think that there is maybe an opportunity. I don't know if that's something that we could look into. I mean, expanding on maybe an existing initiative that's out there, but I think it's a great point because I do think there's this big, people they don't know, but it's also like, well, how do I get involved besides buckthorn? Because that's like, hey, you invite them to buckthorn, they're not going to come back for a few years. I know I invited my whole group to buckthorn and nobody want to come again. So I think there's like some like, let's start with like dandelion picking instead of buckthorn. I think it's a big jump to get people to go to buckthorn. But I think it's a great idea.
And we do work with quite a few volunteers, and you mentioned the Adopt a Park program, which is pretty successful just because it brings people to a neighborhood as a group, which sounds like what you're after. But Luther also has the exciting buckthorn programs, but he has a few events that exceed 100 people. One of them's at Pamela Park. That one's really successful. Spring cleanup has been kind of an ongoing one. With more and more dense housing, some of these new developments are offering to help. We had some help this year up in this quadrant from one of the recent ones by the senior center. So it's kind of growing. There's quite a few people involved, but there's always room for more volunteerism in parks. So we're interested in any ideas you have.
Well, maybe I think it's the education part of it because I am the main contact for Todd and I haven't heard about, I know how to do buckthorn. I know I've talked to Luther several times about it because there's some buckthorn behind my house that I would like someone to, I thought maybe I could have an ordinance for, but I can't actually. But I think that kind of like your cottonwood, but I do think there's a way we could maybe educate them on, I didn't know and I am the one who gets to point information on that. Maybe I could do a dandelion picking or something besides the big, getting people from Todd to go to Pamela is different than doing something within our own group. I mean, I think it's a great idea to expand on that.
And a lot of those park signs in the neighborhoods are maintained really by the neighborhood. There's a lot of those flower plantings and things are kind of adopted by the neighborhood already. So,
Yeah.
But I like the concept.
Yeah, I do.
I think I'll just add too, I think there's also the recognition of there's almost like two types of volunteers. That there's the volunteer that wants to show up on a regular basis and work towards a goal. And I think there's also another volunteer that wants to show up on that Saturday with a bunch of people and get a bunch of stuff done. So there's almost like different types of volunteers out in the community. And we actually discussed this morning with one of Brian Dristy, our parks maintenance supervisor with town staff, about how could we develop a program that actually would take the pressure off of staff when we don't have enough seasonals starting yet. So we do hire a lot of seasonal staff that helps us with that workload over the growing season, but they don't arrive until late May, early June, sometimes depending on their educational background of when they come on. But we also point out that this year we were golfing in March, which means we were at the point where turf was growing. So that March, April, most of May, we did not have that help. So it does put us behind. So is there a program that we can develop to almost start up parks for the season with neighborhoods or with larger groups? I think that would be a benefit to us as well. You know, things like prepping playground mulch, prepping this, you know, getting things kind of started up before we're fully staffed for the year, because that is a gap that's real, that we just don't have enough resources until they arrive. And then we're facing that being behind, which generates calls to Tom and Brian and myself. And I think that would be of benefit to us as well. So expansion of that we'd be in favor of that.
I know there's been some, bandy about on social media about weeds, and it's just hard to keep up on that, on something like that. But, I don't know if Tom has a list of, here's all the things that we know that we can knock off internally, and we do. And here's that, as Perry pointed out, in the spring, we've got this, or, we've got a painting project coming up at X Park that, we can have professionals do it and pay a lot of money, or we can have the neighborhood do it and have a barbecue. But if we can develop maybe along the same list of, here's the philanthropic things that we'd love to have donations for, but here's the real world things that we'd love to have help with. And then maybe to Corin's point about just building that pride in your local park too. So you're not asking me to go pretty up her park for her, but Rick and I would be, you know, more, and Greg too, would be more than happy to pitch in at Lewis because we drive by it every day, right? So, but anyway, that's just this vague idea I had that we could.
Sounds like we're reading it underneath.
At Lewis.
Todd.
Lewis.
Can we take a
Um,
vote on that, Chair? Lewis or Todd?
It's already been taken. That's great because, I mean, I've lived here, what, 47 years? And you kind of own what you live next to. And, you know, so I think I think philanthropically, there's always ways, or there's many ways to raise money. You know, with look at the two master plans, I mean, there's going to be some philanthropic areas there. You know, I think certainly at the golf course, there's been 600,000 raised over the last 50 years there. We've got 126 still in the kitty. They're going to buy a couple nice amenities this fall. So there's some things that, but those are person specific too. They're, you know, the golfing community, I think it's important for us to be on the macro side as well. When we all live here and we enjoy all the parks really, so.
So, Chair, I've got one. I wanted to build off of Perry's comment about the strategic plan. I happen to be one that gets very excited when I see an organization spend the time to do a strategic plan. I love it. And then I hate it when it sits on an actual or a digital shelf and nobody even thinks about it for the next 5 years, right? So we've got a 300+ page document that was our strategic plan in 2016. And Perry, just as you went through that parking lot, I happened to pull out at least what I think is the easiest page 18, that summarizes the 12, you know, strategic action items or projects that came out of the strategic plan. And 5 of the 12 were touched on your parking lot. So 2 sides of that story. They're still relevant and they're not yet done, right? They're still in progress. And so it made me think that maybe one of the things we could suggest is, and I don't think this would be a difficult work item, is to have some of us from a commission perspective revisit these 12 strategic objectives that came out of the strategy and do an update next year and say, are they still relevant? Have they been completed? Have they been recommended and turned down? Are they not moving because of some particular hurdle? And can we identify that? And maybe that just gives us a relatively concise document that follows on to the strategic plan before somebody decides we should spend a bunch of money to bring another consultant in and do another strategic plan. It says, what did we do with the last one? And where could we apply a bit of leverage to really cross a few of these off over the next 3 to 5 years? So that might be a way that we can kind of bundle some of those things that are in our parking lot and really give us a better sense of how they relate back to the 2016 plan.
Thank you, Craig.
If I could add to my thought that I brought up in our last meeting, which I think actually is tied to the strategic plan. And I'm still getting through that thick document. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but the idea of wayfinding, 18. I'll read that. And it's, you know, the idea of thinking about how my family uses the parks and getting around how we're connected, how we're not connected. And the wayfinding was kind of an easy one to pull out of that, which is page 18. But I'd like to kind of refine that and maybe bring it back, some drafts of other ways, maybe a work item to look how we can connect people. I'm thinking about my own family. It's, you know, we've got, you know, kiddos that aren't on swing sets anymore, but they're out riding around. How do we get them throughout the community safely? People, younger people, older people who don't drive, or those that just prefer to walk or bike. How can we create safe avenues for these people to maneuver their community in relation to our parks? And I think even just starting with the one on page 18 of our strategic plan of that wayfinding to help people get around, and then maybe identify some other things that we could do and rank them, which is kind of my ideas right now to bring forward next month.
Thanks, Brian.
Not sure if any of the WebEx commissioners have any comments.
Any comments, Julie?
This is Commissioner Strawther. I was just going to follow up and second the wayfinding piece and the connecting parks for anybody who wants to reach our parks without driving a car. But I will say it is something that we've talked about with this commission for a while. And the challenge has always been, it's been something that has required often working with the Transportation Commission, right? And looking at how we can integrate sort of our desires with their work around, and I believe it's the Transportation Commission, like there's a ground round project that Corin and I worked on maybe a year and a half ago. And so I really like that idea. And I think the challenge has always been is it also touches on the work of another commission. And we've struggled with how to do those sort of cross commission projects well. And I'm going to apologize. It's hard because I can't see your faces very big, so I can't tell if people are nodding or shaking their head, but so I'll leave it there. And I can also potentially hear Paw Patrol in the background here. I hope to join you next month in person, but that was my only comment.
Pat, any comments, Pat?
Nope, just great discussion.
Okay. Matt, anything?
I would just second Commissioner Good's idea of looking at the 12 on the list there on page 18. I was just looking at that list and revisiting that and considering that. So.
And I think just to build off of Julie's comment as well as Brian's, I mean, number one on that list is create a multi-use trail system through the city to connect parks and enterprise facilities. And you mentioned, I had the same thought, Julie, as I jotted down, grand rounds. We've talked about that. It's been on work plans. Could anyone say whether we have one yet? We have parts of it, but what would it be interesting to be able to almost map that out, walk that out, bike that out and say what parts exist, what parts don't exist, where do we have gaps? How do we begin to do wayfinding that if somebody said, I would like to bike that grand rounds, that they could actually find it and follow it, or at least follow the 30%, 60%, 85% that's there. I don't know where we stand on that, but it's an item that's been kicking around for several years.
I mean, I can tell you where we ended it because we basically created exactly what you're saying, and we created out actually mapped together and handed it over with the Transportation Commission, or maybe it was the staff in Transportation actually. But we basically got it, and we wanted to be able to create some form of documentation to put it at least online. And they were going to be able to do that for us, but I never saw it happen. In terms of getting signage, it was down to funding, because to truly have that signage, it would be something more grand and beautiful so people could see like, here I am and here's where I want to go to and here's how I can get there. So we created it and we put it online, but that was our only option of a fund-free way of doing that. But I mean, I can pull up that. I still have all the information because we did that. Julie's right. I have to look through my emails to say the person's name in Transportation. But we may be able to circle back and see if we can push a little harder.
Yeah, I believe it culminated with Andrew Scipione. Is that the name you're thinking of? Actually did a presentation to the commission to tie together your work and the Grand Rounds work. And I think the question you had at the time, which is the relevant question, is the duration of the build out. And I think that was the piece of how long it could take to potentially build out the full Grand Rounds was of concern.
And so just to follow up on that too, that's an unfortunate and an easy place to get stuck. Right? as opposed to saying, well, what's our assumption on how long that might take? Is it 1 year if we had the funding? And if so, what is that funding dollar amount? Or is it 6 years, no matter how much funding we have? And then we would tend to put it in the back burner, right? But I think we all kind of get ourselves stuck in, oh, we don't have the funding, and oh, that's going to take a while, and let's move on to something else. You know, and we never even get a sense for how big is the challenge. And even if we're basing it on some assumptions that we might discuss, at least we could get the two commissions, two staffs, to whomever needs to be involved and say, what's our assumption on how big a challenge that is? And then at least we have something to put in front of the city council to say, this is how close we are to getting there. Where today, I just think we still have some things that are up in the clouds that nobody's really sure how big of an issue it is. So let's go figure out something that we can define a bit more clearly.
And this is Commissioner Strother. One more thing I would just add is the challenge too that I recall is, you know, some of this, there's the Transportation Commission, but some of this was in planning, and I'm probably butchering the names a little bit, like planning and public works on when we're building bike trails and sidewalks, and what the getting all of that work to come together in a cohesive and comprehensive plan, and making sure that we all understand it was and still always feels like a challenge to figure out how they work together.
Any other discussion then on for 2022, or if not, go ahead. Sorry.
I guess, Chair, just some feedback from the commission about how you would like to see this in your packet next month, so you can digest, prioritize, wordsmith. We could take suggestions if you want to send staff potential wording, if you'd like me to take a crack at wording some of the initiatives. I guess, how can we best use your August meeting wisely to get through the discussion and then have a recommendation from the commission?
Can I add to that? I feel like we did this before, and then council came and said, actually, here's what we want you to work on. So can we try to incorporate what they're going to want us to work on into that? However we list this out, I think this format isn't the concern for me. I feel like we created this list before, and it was like, actually, we want you guys to work on this instead. So I would love to get this instead prior to, so we can kind of mix in their thoughts as well as ours to try to come up with a more cohesive. It felt a little less cohesive than in the past this last time.
Yeah, the process will be is that they'll review your proposal and then tweak it from there. If there are things that they wanted you to work on that they knew about, they most likely would have told you during the joint meeting. But not having anything on that, I think they agreed with you that, you know, alternative funding and communications were key. However, there isn't anything that was a must have from them, or else they probably would have told you at the joint session. So most likely you'll see their edits reflected in your wording after Chair Itis presents.
Well, can I suggest, if we've got the parking lot items. So we have to figure out who's going to wordsmith those, because there's a bunch of them. But I mean, we came up with 3 here. So how about if we take each one of ours and send the wording to Perry to put on the suggestion of the work plan. And then for all the ones in the parking lot.
And I just want to say, I put them all in the parking lot because you haven't officially decided yet. And once you officially decide, you may want to keep some in the parking lot because maybe you accomplish a bunch and you want to go back to that list later in 2022. But for now, I'm just using that as kind of a placeholder for the list.
I think building off of what Mike was just saying, I would agree. I could summarize kind of my thoughts here, pass those along. It might also be helpful if we could take your bullet list on the parking lot, and if any of us have additional content to add to those, to do that before the August meeting. Because I don't get a sense that in this session here, we get to do a lot of good creative work, right? I think we're better off getting that done as a draft ahead of time, look at it, and then give feedback and selection on those draft items during the session.
I would agree. It's hard to get feedback when you bring up an idea for an actual recommendation that evening.
Yeah.
So,
But, so for the ones in the parking lot, then what do we do? Are we wordsmithing them more? Are we?
I would suggest if you look at that list and have any inputs that you might wordsmith that, let's send it along to staff and then allow them to kind of take 2 or 3 other inputs that we have and kick something back to us that says, this is what we heard in addition to what we had. Because right now they're just kind of one-line bullet items.
So for the 3 that came up tonight, we 3
those.
take it. For everything else, everybody's responsibility.
If you have some
to
inputs, that would be my recommendation. If you have some inputs, pass along. If you don't have inputs, that's fine. But if there are any, then maybe that helps us put a little bit more substance into those items that allows us to have something we can think about before we meet in August.
Mhm.
Any possibility of getting that before August?
I
A
think
day
we-
or 2 before?
we put it in your packet.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
when you receive the August packet, you'll
Good.
see
That would just save some time. That night, too.
pseudo draft initiatives for 2022.
Very good.
And then maybe part of our work, Rick, can become prioritizing those a little bit so we have a
Before-
more fruitful
Before
discussion.
you
Yeah.
do that. Anything a little specific that we might have, item specific, I guess.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Item 7, chair and member comments. I'm going to go to the screen first. Matt?
I do not have
Member
any
comments.
comments.
Julie?
No comments for me. Thank you.
Okay. Pat? Pat?
Sorry, no comments.
Okay, Mike?
Still on. Nothing for me.
Greg?
Nothing to add tonight.
Nothing.
Good. I have none.
Thank you, Chair. I'll jump into the next item, the city council updates. The council last met June 15th. They did take a meeting or 2 off kind of over the 4th of July holiday. So 2 actions related to the department for the June 15th meeting. We did authorize the purchase of some supplemental playground equipment for Arden Park. In review of that and some initial neighborhood feedback right away is there was not an opportunity for 2 to 5 play. That should have been included in the design. It was more geared and signed for 5 to 12. So being a neighborhood park, 2 to 5, it is an important age group that we do plan for and include. So we did order that. The good news is that we'll just be rearranging the existing equipment within the container. It doesn't need to expand. So that work will occur upon arrival. And the council did also authorize, adopt a resolution supporting some grant funding for an innovations for aging program that will be conducted at the Edina Senior Center. So 2 actions they took last June. And I'll jump right into informational items. Just of note, as you can tell, activity has picked up quite a bit in our park system and our enterprise system throughout the Braemar Ice Arena. A couple of notes. Not only did they host the City of Lakes Figure Skating Club annual competition in June, but the DeBeauty League is back and starts tomorrow evening. So as a reminder, that does occur at Braemar Arena, and it does feature professional and collegiate level athletes that do play in that league. And also we did receive a grant for $25,000 at the arena to help support the dehumidification project. Braemar Golf Course continues to be busy. in all aspects, from the driving range to the tea time reservations. In particular of note, it's something we did discuss last meeting or a meeting two ago, is just the popularity of our programming out there, lessons and junior programs. We've discussed ways that maybe we can incorporate and try to handle that growth, not only from a summer standpoint, from a year-round standpoint, using some of our other facilities. And the also good news is that as the case counts, and I think people are more comfortable coming out in public, the leagues and activities that we have on the courtyard that we're offering are full. So so activity has resumed and increased around that. Centennial Lakes Park continues to be a busy location. A couple of major events that are coming up down there: the Torchlight Concert and Yacht Club Lighthouse is August 8th, and the Fall into the Arts Festival will be conducted September 11th and 12th. That festival will be a full-scale festival without restrictions. A number of them have been back to in person. However, some recently, some popular art fairs have been canceled. So we do expect a high turnout with all available vendors as well. The Edina Aquatic Center also continues to be an extremely busy location. If I could state, our guards and staff have been under tremendous load and pressure, and they're doing a remarkable job. We're on pace to probably break the number of saves we've ever had in a year. We might eclipse that with several weeks to go in the season. It's a combination of factors that are not unique to the Edina Aquatic Center. Our peer cities and peer organizations are seeing the exact same thing, and that's the lack of available swimming lessons, probably for the last 18 months to 24 months due to the pandemic. Also, the reintegration of people into popular and busy settings. We're noticing the sometimes lack of awareness of watching children that they're coming to the aquatic center with. Maybe it's glued to a phone, maybe it's socializing, maybe it's kids were homeschooled for a long time and they're just happy to be out and be somewhere. But so for those that are frequenting the aquatic center, you know, your cooperation on water safety and observation and really working with your children to understand their limits and abilities in the pool is a tremendous benefit to help our lifeguards and staff keep people safe at that center. So we continue to try to provide the best care and customer service we can there, but when it comes to the safety of participants, of utmost concern, and we want to have that perfect record, and we need help from other people to establish that. So last item on that, number of programs continue. We're in the process of filling the recreation supervisor position. As a reminder, Tiffany Bushlin was selected as the general manager at Centennial Lakes Park, so we're interviewing for that. The senior center has opened to full capacity, and we are working on the new activities directory, and we are preparing for a city website refresh. So hopefully have much better content and ease of use for some of our items. So I don't know if you had any questions on anything in the packet for your informational items this evening.
Perry, I had one question. Have we had any recent updates on how Red River Kitchen is doing at Braemar?
I don't have any numbers per se, but I do know their event business has picked up. I know they had a number of consecutive days where they were going to have events, which is positive news for them. In addition to their meal service and cart service is doing much better now as well. So I would say the restaurant industry has been under tremendous stress. I won't say they are out of it, but they're trending in a positive direction. As you know, obviously they've been open, you know, during our core business and operating. However, it's that event business that is really a bonus to them and then to us on the revenue share side of things. So it's really good to see that those are being booked up again.
Good, thanks.
Your upcoming meetings and events. Obviously, your next official meeting is August 10th. That will again be of the hybrid approach, so very similar to what you see this evening. After that, heading into October, we will be fully in person. There may be an option where residents still view us online through this portion, but our administrative services staff will let us know those changes, things. And then just a reminder that that tree panel discussion, for those of you that are interested, is next Tuesday, the 27th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. It is on WebEx, so you don't have to come here if you're interested. So those are the updates I had for you this evening.
Very good, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll call for the motion and a second for adjournment.
Second.
Barry, if you do the honors.
Willett.
Aye.
Scotch.
Aye.
Struthers.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Good.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Chairitis.
Aye,
Your motion to adjourn is approved.
thank you.